There is an invisible drain on your life, a subtle exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. You feel it when you scroll through the highlight reel of other people's supposed perfect lives, and you feel it most intensely when you are forced to participate in the charade. Almost nobody is talking about the quiet revolution happening across the world right now, the deep, undeniable pull to cancel the plans, to close the door, and to simply disappear. Not into depression, not into failure, but into the one state the modern world has taught you to fear most: solitude. If you have been feeling this profound urge to withdraw, listen closely. This is not weakness. This is not avoidance. It is intelligence recognizing itself. And I am not saying that to flatter you. I am saying that because science confirms it. Studies in behavioral economics and psychology show that individuals with higher cognitive capacity are 2.5 times more likely to actively seek solitude. They are not antisocial, they are unsocial, and there is a critical difference. They don't hate people. Their minds simply demand a level of depth, complexity, and authentic exchange that most interactions cannot provide. You crave silence because your biology is screaming for a ceasefire. Every time you perform, every time you wear that smile like a uniform, you are incurring a measurable biological cost. Scientists call this accumulating the allostatic load, the cumulative wear and tear on your body's systems from chronic stress. Social exhaustion is not a moral failing. It is your ancient neurobiology running into a modern, unsustainable pressure system. Our Paleolithic brains still interpret social performance, the fear of rejection or judgment, as a low-grade threat. Solitude is the only state that allows your HPA axis to finally shut down. This is why the smartest minds in history fortified their solitude like a castle. And by the end of this, you will understand why. Let me explain what is really happening when you choose to stay home. We have been sold a story that connection equals happiness, that constant social interaction is the metric of a rich existence. And for the vast majority of human history, for 99% of our evolutionary timeline, that story made perfect biological sense. When survival depended entirely on the tribe, when your safety required hypervigilance and cooperation, being alone was not a preference, it was a deadly vulnerability. Your brain developed a primal alarm system, an ancient fear center, designed to signal danger. The instant you were separated from the collective, but something critical has changed. We no longer live in the Paleolithic era. You are safe in your apartment, yet the programming remains. That instinctual anxiety, the feeling that something is wrong when you prefer your own company, is the mismatch theory in action. It is a biological ghost signal, an outdated fear running on ancient code. Here is what they don't tell you. The people who seek solitude are not running away from life. They are running towards themselves. Think about the last social interaction you had. Not the highlight reel, but the actual cost. The conversations that felt like reciting pre-written scripts. The forced laughter. The smile you wore like a costume. Driving home afterward, you felt that emptiness. That peculiar depletion that has nothing to do with late hours. It is the exhaustion of being someone you are not. This is not psychological fatigue. It is metabolic overdraft. Schopenhauer called this the tragedy of losing 3/4 of ourselves just to resemble other people. 75%. Think about the energy required to cut away the authentic, raw, true version of your inner world, leaving only a quarter, a mere fragment, to present to the public. This is what we call socializing. But most human interaction is not connection. It is highly regulated, exhausting theater. Two individuals are perpetually performing edited versions of themselves. each monitoring their words, editing their thoughts, and calculating the impression they are making. We are engaged in constant, low-grade surveillance of the self. This constant social vigilance, the fear of a misstep, the fear of rejection, is interpreted by your ancient neurobiology as a sustained, low-level threat. It keeps your HPA axis firing. This constant drip feed of cortisol prevents your system from achieving true rest, accumulating the debilitating allostatic load we discussed. You cannot rest when you are performing. You cannot truly breathe when you are holding a pose. The cost of authenticity feels like rejection, so you remain in character, smiling through the fatigue, agreeing when you want to disagree. And slowly, imperceptibly, you forget who you actually are. Your life becomes a copy of the life they told you to want. This is the result of constant social engagement. It does not connect you to others. It severs your connection to yourself. The voice in your head starts sounding like everyone else's voice, until one day you sit in the silence and realize something terrifying. You no longer recognize the raw self staring back. I am not dismissing genuine connection, those rare, beautiful moments when two human beings meet without masks. But those moments are scarce. Carl Jung observed that the deepest loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. How many of your current relationships allow you to speak about what truly matters? We are surrounded by hundreds of acquaintances, and yet profoundly alone, because we have confused proximity with intimacy. We mistake the mere presence of people for genuine connection. We are straining our ancient social capacity. Our minds are cognitively limited, defined by Dunbar's number, a boundary of approximately 150 stable, meaningful relationships. Modern digital life forces us to manage weak ties far beyond this threshold, draining the mental energy required for deep, authentic intimacy. The deepest loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the presence of people who cannot or will not see you. And this is precisely where staying home becomes an act of psychological rebellion. When you cease the performance, you begin to undo the loneliness. The world has taught you that solitude equals loneliness. But those who have mastered the art of being alone will tell you the reverse. The loneliest they ever felt was in a crowded room, the most connected, in silence, by themselves. Real solitude is not the absence of others. It is the profound, terrifying presence of yourself. Why is this presence terrifying? Because true solitude immediately activates your default mode network DMN, the brain's center for deep self-reflection, planning, and meaning-making. DMN activity is crucial for synthesizing experience and generating authentic insight. Schopenhauer knew this. Ordinary minds cannot tolerate being alone because they cannot tolerate their own company. The silence is unbearable because it forces the DMN to confront the internal deficit, the suppressed questions, the feelings avoided, the truth about who we have become. So, we fill every moment with noise. We are not just distracting ourselves, we are medicating the internal discomfort. Our social media platforms are precise digital Skinner boxes, using variable reward reinforcement, the unpredictable dopamine hit of a notification, to exploit our primal need for approval. Alan Watts saw through this societal confusion perfectly. We confuse activity with reality. We believe that if we are busy, we are alive. If we are moving, we are progressing. We are terrified of the silence because in silence, there is no script, no role to play, no performance to maintain. We run from the silence. We fill every space with other people's voices because hearing our own has become unbearable. That truth reveals the vast, painful gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. It exposes the ways you have consistently betrayed your authentic self just to fit in. People do not fear silence because it is empty. They fear it because it is full of everything you have been rigorously trying not to see. It contains the history of your self-abandonment. But here is the neurological shift when you stop running. When you close the door and sit with yourself without distraction or escape, the first phase is uncomfortable. It is withdrawal. Your system is addicted to the constant input of external validation and energy, and you are cutting off the supply. Every instinct screams at you to break the silence. This discomfort is the final shedding of the allostatic load. But if you remain, if you push through this neurological discomfort, something shifts. The constant noise in your head begins to quiet. The performance tension in your body finally releases. Slowly, gently, you begin to hear it your own voice. Not the voice that sounds like your parents or the culture, or the voice trained to say the acceptable things. The prefrontal cortex, relieved of social maintenance, shifts its resource allocation inward. This voice has been buried beneath years of conditioning and performance. But it knows things. It knows what you actually want, not what you have been instructed to want. It knows your genuine interests, not what impresses others. This solitude is an act of internal excavation. This is what Schopenhauer meant. A man can only be himself while he is alone. Because freedom is not merely doing what you want, it is knowing what you want. In solitude, you stop being molded by external forces. You stop performing versions of yourself that require exhausting, chronic effort to maintain. You just are. And in that profound simplicity, you discover something remarkable. You are enough. Not the accomplished version. Not the successful or impressive version. Just you. Raw, unfiltered, authentic. This is the definition of real power. Not the power to impress or manipulate others, but the power to be yourself, regardless of who is watching. The power to think your own thoughts without needing approval. The power to feel your own feelings without needing external validation. Now, let's inject the scientific truth into this philosophical realization. Why is that performance so exhausting? It's not just emotional fatigue. It is a measurable biological burden called the allostatic load. Every time you put on a mask, every time you calculate an answer, your brain registers a low-level threat, the threat of social rejection. This constant external monitoring keeps your HPA axis subtly activated, perpetually pumping stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline into your system. Performance is not a one-time sprint. It's chronic, low-grade warfare against the self. This subtle, persistent stress causes an accumulation of allostatic load, a steady, biological tax on your resources that wears down the body's regulatory systems. Your brain interprets social maneuvering as escaping a predator. Solitude is the only state where the system truly shuts down. It is the mandatory, non-negotiable time required for the parasympathetic nervous system to activate the rest and digest mode, allowing true cellular recovery from the burden of constant self-maintenance. Why do we instinctively fight this peace? Why does the silence often trigger primal anxiety? This is a fundamental conflict of evolutionary psychology known as the Mismatch Theory. For 99% of human history, the Paleolithic era being alone was synonymous with imminent death. Separation from the tribe meant exposure, lack of resource sharing, and certain demise. That original programming is still running. Our deep brain is still running on this ancient operating system. When you choose solitude today, your primitive limbic system screams, "Danger!" You are expelled. Isolation equals death. But this signal is a ghost. It is a biological program that is centuries out of date, yet powerful enough to generate panic, and force us back into meaningless, energy-draining engagement. Recognizing this ghost signal is the first step toward reclaiming your cognitive independence and choosing modern wisdom over ancient fear. This ancient fear is compounded by the modern reality of scale. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar established the cognitive limit for meaningful, trust-based relationships. Dunbar's number, roughly 150. Yet, the information age, fueled by constant digital access, forces us to mentally manage hundreds, often thousands, of weak social ties. This dangerously overloads our social cognitive capacity, the mental bandwidth required to process who knows whom, what the current social script is, and which acceptable version of yourself you need to deploy. This overwhelming social load primes us perfectly for the true modern trap, the digital Skinner box. The world needs you to crave external validation, because craving leads directly to consumption and perpetual performance. Social platforms are meticulously engineered behavioral laboratories, designed specifically to exploit our evolutionary need for tribal acceptance, using psychological mechanisms refined in the laboratory. They operate on a variable reward reinforcement schedule. The likes, the shares, the notifications, the validation, they arrive on an unpredictable timeline. You never know if your next post or text will get 10 hits or 1,000. This inherent uncertainty is scientifically proven to create the highest level of compulsive, addictive behavior. You are not checking your phone, you are compulsively pulling the lever for a random, unpredictable hit of dopamine. This mechanism traps us in continuous, exhausting social performance. We are perpetually edited, calculating the optimal presentation of self to maximize the uncertain chemical reward. The true cost of this digital performance is the complete erosion of internal stability. Your inherent worth becomes entirely externalized, reliant on the volatile, unpredictable feedback loop of the global audience. This dependence is slavery. The moment you seek validation outside yourself, you hand over your personal freedom to the algorithm. You become spiritually dependent on external forces. Solitude is the essential, radical act of dopamine fasting. It is cutting off the unreliable, damaging supply of external chemical rewards, forcing your brain to reset and find intrinsic value that originates entirely from within your sustained presence, not from your fleeting performance. This digital tyranny is compounded by the mental fatigue of maintaining multiple identities, the paradox of choice applied to the self. Every context switch, work, family, friends, social media demands a new, bespoke performance script, taxing your mental energy. This constant self-editing, this calculation of acceptability, is the heavy cognitive tax you pay daily. Solitude is the only time the system defaults back to a single, consistent, authentic identity. Alan Watts saw through this industrial-scale deception. The modern world confuses activity with reality. We are trapped in a self-sustaining web of simulated activity, social and digital pretense that we mistake for a rich, fulfilled life. The quiet is terrifying because it immediately reveals the web for what it is: a mechanism designed for capture. What we truly fear in the silence is not emptiness, but fullness. Solitude forces us to confront the entire backlog of unprocessed experience, the suppressed grief, the unasked questions, the compromises, and the full, undeniable truth of who we have become. The digital noise is merely our collective defense mechanism against required emotional maturity. We fill the space to avoid the necessary, terrifying work of looking within. Schopenhauer understood that the path to true freedom is spiritual self-sufficiency, or autarky. He argued that all suffering originates from wanting outside ourselves. It's from basing our happiness on circumstances or the approval of others. The moment you achieve spiritual autarky, you break the cycle of dependency and pain, transforming yourself into a fortress that cannot be breached by external chaos. The world, the economy, and the system actively fear this self-sufficiency. It needs you to be needy. It needs you to fear loneliness, so you will buy the products that promise connection, stay engaged with the platforms that exploit you, and keep performing to maintain your perceived value within its matrix. But the moment you discover you do not actually need what they are selling, the moment you find worth within, you become dangerous. You become free. And freedom, specifically the freedom from needing external validation, is the one thing the attention economy cannot tolerate. Staying home is not a surrender. It is a divestment from the marketplace of attention, a revolutionary declaration of inner independence. What happens, chemically and structurally, when the performance stops and the external noise is cut? Your brain finally engages in its most critical work. We shift resource allocation from the brain's task-positive network, which handles external focus, to the default mode network DMN. The DMN is the engine of self-reflection, deep future planning, complex problem-solving, and true creativity, the very mechanism responsible for generating profound meaning. DMN optimization is why every historical genius, from Newton discovering calculus to Da Vinci creating masterpieces, fortified their solitude like a castle. They understood that deep work, the kind of labor that yields novel insights and massive societal contributions, is physically and cognitively impossible in an environment of constant social demand, interruption, and context switching. Solitude is not passive rest. It is active cognitive synthesis. It is the mandatory processing phase where your brain finally processes the disconnected data of your life, integrates new information, and constructs the necessary narrative of meaning. Genius hits a target no one else can see, but those targets only become visible when the noise stops, the masks are removed, and the DMN is allowed to run unfettered, building the future from within. The crowd gives you temporary proximity. Solitude offers permanent intimacy with your own potential. The deepest fear of the modern person is not that they are inadequate, but that they are limitless, and that recognizing that limitlessness requires silence and the abandonment of the approved social script. You cannot serve two masters: the demands of the crowd and the depth of your own mind. The most revolutionary act you can commit in the 21st century is not to be everywhere doing everything, performing for everyone, but to be still, to be quiet, to be alone with the vast, untapped universe inside yourself. Solitude is the forge of selfhood. It is where you move from being a reflected image of the crowd to becoming the single autonomous source of your own light. This is not the end of your engagement with the world. This is the radical beginning. We have reached the final pivot point. We have analyzed the cost of performance, the chronic cortisol load, the cognitive overload from Dunbar's social debt, the 75% of yourself you sacrifice to maintain the mask. But now, we must recognize the radical reward: spiritual self-sufficiency. This is not just a philosophical concept. It is an economic declaration. The system needs you to be needy. It needs you to trade your internal peace for external approval, because that exchange is the currency of the attention economy. Every notification, every calculated social interaction, is a tax on your authenticity. The world profits from your self-doubt. Solitude is the ultimate act of divestment. It is the refusal to participate in the marketplace of validation. When your happiness no longer requires their presence, their applause, or their affirmation, you achieve zero dependence. You are dangerous because you are truly free. The system cannot monetize a soul that is already whole. Solitude is the condition for wholeness. Remember the neuroscience we discussed. Performance kept your HPA axis in chronic low-grade alarm, fueling your allostatic load. Solitude is the only way to strategically activate the parasympathetic nervous system, flipping the switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. This is not laziness. This is neuroplasticity in action. You are biologically rebuilding your stress tolerance. By turning off the external noise, you force your brain to perform its highest function, the DMN optimization. The DMN takes the fragmented data of your life experiences, failures, lessons, and synthesizes them into personalized meaning. Genius is not random inspiration. It is the complex, dedicated work done by the DMN in the absence of distraction. It is transforming raw input into realized vision. We must address the final illusion FOMO, the fear of missing out. You were conditioned to fear missing the party, the trend, the collective movement. But the deepest, most corrosive fear of the modern person is FOMI's the fear of missing yourself. The fear that if you stop moving, you will find the truth about the life you truly desire and realize you have been living someone else's script. Genius is not born in the noise of the crowd. It is forged in the forge of selfhood. The lineage of transformative thinkers, Newton, Da Vinci, Einstein, fortified their solitude like a castle because they understood that the most valuable commodity is not social capital, but focused cognitive bandwidth. Solitude is not an escape from reality. It is the laboratory where reality is engineered. You cannot see the target. No one else can see if your vision is blurred by the constant performance required to keep up. When you stop striving to fit in, you finally create the space to stand out. The choice is simple, and it requires courage. Fortify the fortress of self. Close the door not in anger, but in devotion to the unedited, authentic, whole self. Do not apologize for your quiet strength. You are not failing at life. You are succeeding at something far more important: radical self-possession. Stay home. Close your door. Turn off the noise. The treasure you have been searching for, connection, purpose, freedom, was never outside you. It was always waiting in the silence. Find yourself, and when you return to the world, you will bring back not a performance, but the powerful, whole, unedited truth of who you are. This is not the end of your engagement. This is the radical beginning of your real life.